welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and today I'm going to be telling you all about the Morris Minor National Weekend that happened in Moreton in the Marsh at the Fire Service College for 2025. So this year it was hosted, like I said, in Moreton in the Marsh in the Fire Service College. Offered us quite a lot of options for an annual rally, in that it had camping, it had camping facilities, but also had like accommodation block because of the college on site, and the option of catering. So we booked in Peggy and myself and Jamie and Jaffa, and we booked in for 2 nights of camping and 2 cooked breakfasts, because one thing we're kind of quite bad at is actually doing any cooking when we do camping. If we were probably just actually camping and having a camping holiday, we'd probably be a bit better at it. But we tend to only camp when we're at events and stuff like that, and there's so much going on that we don't really feel like cooking. So having a good breakfast each day on site provided for us was potentially going to be a pretty decent bonus for us. And then we'd perhaps only have to sort out our evening meals, which was pretty good going. So we got ourselves booked in, and then on the Friday we set off in convoy from our house, and the young members had organised to have 2 potential meet points before heading into the annual rally ground, so that we had the opportunity to meet up and then hopefully get camped close together. So we had the options of the Classic Motor Hub or Caffeine and Machine. It's a really wonderful part of the world for having lots of car things that you can stop and do. And so we were quite lucky that there was these 2 brilliant options, kind of 20 minutes either side, depending on whether you were coming from the north or the south, for you to go along to. And we had a really decent run over. It was hot, but both of the cars behaved themselves. We didn't really get held up in any traffic, and it took us just about 2 hours really to get to Caffeine and Machine, and we were the second lot there. Dara was already sat there enjoying a drink in the kind of gardens, and we got parked up out the front of Caffeine and Machine before we then ordered a bit of food and drink and sat there and waited as Elliot arrived, Elliot's parents, and a little bit later on Yael and Tash came along as well. We had a nice little burger and a sit in the sunshine and a catch up before we realised that the other people that we were waiting for weren't going to make it before we needed to really head off and head on to camp. So we then headed off into Moreton, stopping off at an Aldi to grab some supplies for camp before we headed to park ourselves up and get ourselves all put up. And at the site already was Nathaniel and Aidan, Lewis and Chelsea, James, and not long after that arrived Lee, who had intended, I think, to meet us at Caffeine and Machine, but had got a little bit held up. We had Hazel and Reese, who arrived a little bit later on, but they didn't have too much to assemble because they were in their camper van. And then Andy and Molly joined a little bit later on as well, and Freya and Lucas and their little dog Blue were also kind of part of our big circle of tents. And then Steph from our Driver Classic was camped quite near to us too. So we had a pretty decent setup of tents across the area, and we had a hot evening trying to assemble all of our tents and get ourselves set up. But once we were all set up, it was quite lovely to sit round and just catch up. We ordered some takeaway to the site, and then enjoyed an evening drinking, chatting and catching up, because the young members is a great bunch and we spend a lot of time helping each other out in the WhatsApp group, but really we only get to see a big number of people at the few events that we're able to put on and at our national rallies. So it's always great to kind of catch up, share stories, and of course some of us had been over to Ireland, and so we were able to share some of the stories with Ireland with the rest of the group, and yeah, it was a really lovely evening. We headed off to bed, and the following morning we had a road run to Bourton-on-the-Water that was going to take us through some scenic routes and some scenic drives, and then hopefully get us parked up at the Cotswolds Motor Museum, which for those of you who are into your motoring museums know that is the one where Brum lives. And so we had a bit of time working out who was going in what cars, because we kind of needed to take as few cars as possible because of the parking in Bourton-on-the-Water. It is a truly chaotic town at the best of times, but when it's being descended upon by the entire Morris Minor Owners Club in various times and forms and things like that, it's going to be even more crazy. So we tried to get into as few cars as possible, so all the cars were at least 3 up, but pretty much all of them were 4 up, and we headed out on the route. Myself, I had Hazel, Reese and Matt in my car, and then Jamie had Elliot, Andy and Zenon, who had joined us for the day, in his car, and then Percy was out on the run, Margot was out on the run, Nathaniel's A35 van was out on the run, Margaret and Chloe's car. I'm not sure if Chloe's car's got a name actually, but that was out on the run as well, with 3 people in it. So we were pretty packed in. Dara was leading at the front with I think Lewis, Chelsea and Molly in, and they got ahead of us at the ford and were able to kind of pull over and get some nice photos of everyone coming through the ford. And then we went up a big hill and carried on to a little pub round the corner, where we were able to kind of get all caught up before we headed on to the next part of the drive. The next part was from there on to the Motor Museum, and it was supposed to be relatively straightforward, but there was a comedy of issues. So we'd already kind of noticed that Nathaniel's van wasn't running quite happily. It was struggling with the hill that was just the other side of the ford, and people had said, oh, maybe it's kind of fuel evaporation or things like that. But also, as we'd left from the little hotel restaurant car park thing that we were in, Nathaniel was leading and he'd taken a wrong turn, and we were trying to communicate to him that there'd been a wrong turn, but I think he was perhaps having various problems with actually getting the car to go, and eventually some of us turned off and went a different way and started following our own route to just get to the museum, hoping that Nathaniel would work out that everyone had stopped following him because they were going the wrong way. We all get to the museum, and we then get a call from Nathaniel to say that he's broken down, but that he's all right. that he thought it was fuel evaporation, and he was kind of waiting for the car to cool off, and he'd then be well on his way. But it turned out that it wasn't, and that he was actually in quite a dangerous place. So Dara and a car full of people went on to put in kind of a bit of a warning, because he was just the wrong side of a corner, that there was a car broken down, and then pushed the car out of the way up this hill. And the rest of us were enjoying the lovely museum. We were having a brilliant time. I do have to, before we get fully into this story, reflect on how brilliant the Cotswolds Motor Museum really was. It's obviously quite tricky to get parked at and go to, but it's well worth it, and I'm so glad that I've finally been able to do it, because the last few times that I've been in the area, Bourton has just been so impossible. So to finally get the opportunity to go round it and enjoy it was brilliant, and a stunning museum with lots of really fantastic bits and bobs in it, and stuff that you might not get to see anywhere else, including the main guy himself, Brum, from the children's TV show of the same name. If you were a car kid growing up, you knew of Brum, you were watching it, and to see the original car on display there, and the inspiration and all the story kind of behind it was great. But there was lots of other really cool stuff as well, and really quite packed into what was not a huge space, but really fun. And the gift shop was great as well. I got myself a t-shirt with Brum on it, which I'm wearing today in the sweltering heat and absolutely loving. And we'd managed to get kind of mostly around the museum. Dara had to leave partway through the museum to go and help Nathaniel. And we got out of the museum, and we got a phone call to say, could Lord James, as we call him, go and help, because he had got a trailer and his Land Rover with him at the show. So would he be able to go and pick them up and take them back to the campsite, because the RAC were only going to recover him back once, so it would either be from their home or from the campsite home. So James and another carload of people went back to the campsite to then swap that over and go and help Nathaniel out, and the rest of us walked around Bourton for a little bit, got some lunch before we also headed back to the campsite to have a little look around the auto jumble and bits and bobs. Some of the really keen young members had been up quite early on the Saturday morning to hit the auto jumble, as they often do, to try and get some bargains. And there's a really lovely gentleman who, if he's watching, deserves a shout out, because he actually offers some pretty decent discounts to young members who are showing an interest in his stand. So some young members got some good bargains of some stuff that they needed, which was fantastic. There was also the opportunity on the Saturday afternoon to go on the M96, the motorway you've never heard of and unlikely to find on a map. But because it's the Fire and Fire Service College, they have to be prepared for dealing with accidents and stuff on motorways with live lanes and stuff like that. So they have a replica short run of a motorway, and so we'd got permission to be able to go on it to get photos of the most moggy filled traffic jam that you've ever seen. And so there was 2 lots of photos that were done on the motorway, and I'm sure they've made for a vast array of fascinating photos. I know the first lot of photos had a drone shot taken. Unfortunately, we ended up in the second lot of photos, but it was still fantastic, and clearly a very popular thing to have been able to be part of. And then Jamie and myself and Dara popped to the Aldi to go and pick up some bits and bobs for the evening. Some of them were going to have a bit of a barbecue and stuff, and others were going to have some other little bits and bobs. So we went and picked those up from the Aldi in Morton, and then came back and had a pretty chill evening around the campsite, waiting for the RAC to come and pick up Nathaniel's van. And it all worked out really quite linked up as it happened, because the theme for this year's branch alley was emergency services, and the young members had decided to have an RAC patrol car with 2 cars having had a crash and an ambulance as their kind of setup for branch alley. So we pushed the A35 van to the front of the camp, and then were followed by Elliot's Allison that had been done up to look like the patrol van. So a pretty decent use of our display vehicles, and had a nice chat with the RAC man. He was unable to even partially tow the vehicle away because the car was too narrow for their 2-wheel dollies, which is kind of worth knowing if you own a classic vehicle. And I think there will be a whole episode brewing about the use of recovery services at the moment with classic vehicles. But in short, it meant that the car had to be kind of pushed to the side so that people could still get in and out of camp, and wait until the next available low loader came so that they could then properly take the vehicle away. So we then went back to camp, and it was getting pretty late by this point, so we headed off to bed, ready for the big day on Sunday. Sunday morning we wake up, and we've got lots of stuff going on. It's the main display day of all the cars. We've got to get our cars onto either branch alley or onto the display field, do a little bit of packing up of camp, but it's so hot already that we're really not feeling like putting camp down just yet. So we go and get the cars on display, have our second breakfast of the trip, having had one the day before, and then go and enjoy the show. And it's a fantastic display on so many of the stands, either in theme or on their kind of own theme. So the Iceni branch were celebrating 40 years of their branch, and that's pretty good going considering that the club itself is celebrating 50 years next year. The South Cheshire branch did a fantastic job, and later on in awards did indeed win the best themed branch alley for having a giant ladder on the back of a Morris Minor with a bear that was all dressed up to be part of the fire service. And some really good stuff. We had a proper look at the auto jumble, didn't buy too much, but it's always good to walk around. I had the opportunity to chat to a few people, interview a few people, and we had the condition class judging, which the young members took on once again. And by the time I'd finished all my interviews, it had rolled round to time for awards. And I'd judged the modified and custom class, and been able to pull out some winners from that with Tash. And there'd been lots of other young members working hard on all the other categories. But the awards also included awards for some people. And I was quite surprised to receive the Jack Daniels Award for services to the club, to celebrate the fact that all I'd achieved in my 3 years as the young members registrar. And was very surprised to receive that. Even more surprised to receive third place in the condition class for 2-door 1,000 saloons. And then Jamie also walked away with a prize for being in the visitor class. So we really are turning into quite awful trophy hunters and pot collectors in our household. We're going to have to get a trophy cabinet installed in our new house. But yeah, a very lovely way to have round things off. We then went back to camp and everyone started to reluctantly disassemble, even though it was still incredibly hot, and get ready to head on home. We ended up leaving around I think 7 o'clock-ish. Took us about 2 hours and a half to get home without really stopping, and had a pretty decent run. The heat was, as we predicted, pretty bad, but both of the cars behaved themselves. I know some people had some issues with overheating, but we managed to do reasonably well. And that was our national weekend. We had such a good time of it. We did really well, all things considered. Both cars behaved themselves and came away with trophies. And yeah, I couldn't believe that I'd been nominated for the Jack Daniels Award, because it's gone to some really fantastic people in the past for so much hard work going into the club. And it's great to see the fact that the young members has been kind of revived, being appreciated as important to the club. But yeah, a fantastic weekend, and I'm so excited to share some of the interviews I managed to grab with people over the weekend with you. And I got to meet a few people who were listeners to the podcast, so it was fantastic to meet you guys. And if it was your first national rally, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. If you've never been and you're thinking you'd perhaps like to go, I'd love to know what kind of questions you have about it. And if you've been going for many years, I'd love to hear how it kind of measured up. This is my 4th year going to Morris Minor events. Obviously the first year of Peggy's ownership was COVID, so there wasn't anything on, but it's such a firm thing in our diary now. I'm very much looking forward to what the 50th anniversary of the club holds next year. I hope you've enjoyed listening to our little adventure, and if you've been watching on YouTube, seeing some of the footage that we caught of our little adventure. And in the meantime, drive safely and happy motoring.